In the quiet town of Willow Creek, nestled deep in the forest, a legend whispered among the townsfolk spoke of a house where time stood still. The house, a grand Victorian mansion, had been abandoned for years until one summer when 12-year-old Jack and his 10-year-old sister Emily were sent to visit their grandparents. Their parents had to leave town for a business trip, and it seemed like a perfect opportunity for the children to bond with their elderly relatives. As they approached the mansion, Jack and Emily marveled at its grandeur. The iron gate creaked open, and the overgrown garden seemed to beckon them forward. "Look, Jack, it's like something out of a fairy tale," Emily said, her eyes wide with excitement. "More like a ghost story," Jack muttered, feeling a shiver run down his spine. Their grandparents greeted them at the door. Grandpa Henry and Grandma Rose looked almost identical to how they remembered them, yet there was something off, something unsettling about their smiles. Their eyes, usually filled with warmth, were now cold and distant. "Welcome, children," Grandpa Henry said, his voice deeper than Jack remembered. "We've missed you so much." Grandma Rose ushered them inside, her grip on Emily's shoulder tighter than necessary. The interior of the house was immaculate, but the air was thick with a strange, musty odor. As they settled into their rooms, Jack noticed that the family photos on the walls were different. The faces were blurred, and in some the eyes seemed to follow him. That night, as they sat down for dinner, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The food tasted odd, and the conversations felt forced. After dinner, they were sent to bed early, much earlier than they were used to. In the darkness of his room, Jack whispered to Emily, "Something's not right, Em. They don't seem like Grandma and Grandpa." Emily nodded, her eyes wide with fear. "I know. I feel it too. What should we do?" Jack thought for a moment. "We need to find out what's really going on here. Tomorrow, we'll look around and see if we can find any clues." The next day, they explored the mansion while their grandparents were occupied. They discovered a hidden door in the basement that led to a small, dimly lit room. Inside, they found an old chest filled with dusty books and strange artifacts. One book caught Jack's eye. It was bound in dark leather and titled The Doppelganger Ritual. Flipping through the pages, Jack's heart raced as he read about creatures that could take the form of loved ones, trapping their victims forever. The only way to break the spell was to destroy the mirror in which the ritual was performed. Just then, they heard footsteps approaching. Jack quickly hid the book, and they slipped out of the room, narrowly avoiding detection. That night, as they lay in bed, they devised a plan to find and destroy the mirror. The next morning, Jack and Emily pretended to play in the garden while keeping an eye on their grandparents. They noticed that Grandpa Henry frequently went into the attic. When the coast was clear, they sneaked upstairs and found a large, ornate mirror covered with a heavy cloth. "This must be it," Jack whispered. "We have to break it." But as they approached the mirror, a chilling laugh echoed through the attic. Their grandparents stood in the doorway, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "Did you really think you could outsmart us?" Grandma Rose hissed, her voice distorted. Jack grabbed a nearby candlestick and hurled it at the mirror. The glass shattered and a blinding light filled the room. The grandparents screamed, their forms twisting and contorting before vanishing into thin air. The house began to tremble, and the walls seemed to close in around them. Jack and Emily raced downstairs, but the front door wouldn't budge. Panic set in as the house groaned and creaked, the air growing colder by the second. "We need to find another way out," Jack shouted over the noise. They ran through the house, searching for an exit. The windows were all sealed shut, and the doors led to empty rooms or brick walls. Desperation clawed at them as they realized they were trapped. "Jack, what if we never get out?" Emily cried, tears streaming down her face. "We will, Em, I promise," Jack said, trying to stay calm. In their frantic search, they stumbled upon an old, dusty painting of the house. Jack noticed something odd about it. There was a small door painted on the side of the house near the garden that they hadn't seen before. "Maybe that's our way out," Jack said, pulling Emily towards the garden. They raced outside and searched the wall until they found a hidden door, cleverly concealed by ivy. Jack pushed it open, and they tumbled through, finding themselves in a dark, narrow tunnel. The tunnel seemed to stretch on forever, but they kept moving, driven by fear and determination. Finally, they emerged into the forest, the mansion looming behind them like a dark sentinel. As they caught their breath, Jack looked back at the house. "We need to warn people about this place. It's not safe." Emily nodded, her face pale but resolute. "But first, let's go home." They made their way back to Willow Creek, where they told their story to the authorities. The mansion was investigated, but no trace of their grandparents was ever found. The house was sealed off, and the legend of Willow Creek Mansion grew even darker. Jack and Emily never spoke of their ordeal again, but the experience left them with a bond stronger than ever. They knew that they had faced something truly evil and lived to tell the tale. The memory of the doppelgangers haunted their dreams, but they found solace in knowing that they had escaped the clutches of the malevolent spirits that had taken over their grandparents' home. Years later, the mansion still stood abandoned and decaying. The townsfolk continued to whisper about the eerie house in the forest, warning their children to stay away. But Jack and Emily knew the truth. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, forever marked by the horrors they had encountered in that forsaken place.